Yeah. Well, Teresa, what would you say to a parent, or a loved one of someone that, died from, the disease of addiction, drug poisoning, that might be hesitant or nervous to submit their loved one to the project?
Okay. So, I would say that, you know, Into Light, it provides a critical message and a reminder um, that people suffering with SUD and their loved ones, that there's a story to be told, and it gives us an opportunity to consider hope, right? So I was very hesitant about doing it. It seemed like a big ask. And I think when you lose a loved one and you're grieving, regardless of the reason, you have to ask yourself that question. So here's what I did is so I in the learning I've done since I've lost my daughter, I've learned a lot about, substance use disorder is a family disease, right? And that pain often in that disease comes from resistance, and it comes from everyone. And I think that the resistance fuels the stigma. So those suffering from the disease, I feel like there's a swirl of kind of confusion and shame. And the shame tells people that are suffering that you're not worthy of treatment or you'll be embarrassed if you go for treatment. And for the loved one trying to support a sibling, a spouse, a child, whoever it is in your life, I think it whispers in our ears that we've lost a child. What have we done wrong? Why couldn't I be a better parent, spouse, whatever, right? And was this my fault? So I think that stigma is so powerful, it causes us to lose the ability to interact, enjoy life, and make choices. What Into Light does, and surprisingly for me, because like I said, I had some resistance, it gave a forum to talk about the person as the person, not the person that we lost, right? And it's a much more beautiful experience because so much of our life has gone into why we lost them and what happened to make them no longer be here with us. So it's not about how they died, it's about how they lived, it's about how they were individuals, it's about how they contributed, and that the beauty, the unique beauty that's captured in the portraits and in the stories, and sharing that with others, I think we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to um, the people that we've lost, right? Um, and in terms of the process, like I said, I was really kind of intimidated by it for a few reasons. One I'll get into, which is, my daughter didn't overdose. So she has a different relationship with the disease. But what I realized when you go through it is you're not sending information in to, some strangers on a website and then you get what you get. The interaction of going back with the artist, going back with the person writing the story, being able to give feedback that was then accepted, um, was really very helpful.
Mhm.
So you're relying on the expertise of these folks who are artists, and who are writers. But when I felt if there was a piece that didn't connect with me, I could bring that up, and it was responded to.
Mhm.
And
Very,
so that I think is just an important message. It was
very.
much more powerful than I ever could imagine. And my hope is that all families get to experience that.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Um, through through this experience, did you meet or make any connections to other families that you hadn't known prior to getting involved? And do you plan on and have you stayed in touch? Or do you plan on staying in touch with those people?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky, I feel, to be very well connected in Delaware in the recovery community. So I haven't had, in the recent few years, that sense of isolation.
Right.
Um, you know, Delaware is very small, right? But we have a fantastic network of grassroots organizations, nonprofits, um, politicians, funding sources, police departments who work closely to get together to address the needs. And so for me, walking into that room, what struck me was that I knew at least half the people or their families, right?
Wow.
Bittersweet, but it also was an important message about Delaware. Um, but I think what we have to say is let's not fool ourselves because Delaware is number 2 in the nation, leading cause of overdose deaths, and we're small and we have these great connections, right? So what can we do differently? And I think, there's a sense of despair when you have that realization. But I think an exhibit like Into Light, and when you think about how the people live, not how they passed away, it makes you think about focusing on the hope, not the fear, not the
Mm,
shame, not the stigma. So where I didn't necessarily, meet new people I stayed in touch with, there was just a lot of meaningful conversations. I've been back 2 or 3 times, which is a different experience. And to watch others experience it's been very healing in a lot of ways. But again, I think that our hope has to be stronger than our fear, right? So this brings us hope. The other thing is, you know, what didn't get lost to me. I mean, we showed 41 people on those walls, right? But it was a diversity in ages, in backgrounds, in interest, in personalities, serving as another reminder that this epidemic is touching everyone.
yeah.
And then that we have the opportunity, the ability, and the knowledge to change the trajectory if we make the right and hard choices. And for some reason, when I looked at that, this person was 19 and this person was 48 and this person, when you really kind of put those pieces together,
Mm.
you really think about what we're up against. But again, that there's possibilities because these are people, you
Oh yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm I, I'm blown away by your answers already, Teresa. Thank you.
I have a lot to say, Jeremy. Never a problem there.
It's really fabulous. Yeah, I'm so grateful. Did you learn anything? I think a big part of Into Light, one of the big causes for it, or the reasons for it, obviously aside from changing the conversation and reducing the stigma, is to educate. That's one of the big things that Theresa and Stephanie are trying. Theresa and Barbara are trying to do,
Yeah.
is to educate. Did you learn anything in this process? I mean, it sounds to me like you've already been pretty involved in this. So
Yeah.
I'm just
So
curious if there was something you
yeah,
learned.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't know that I learned anything new, but it helped me put the pieces together in my head in a different way, right?
Yeah,
So the exhibit, like I said, it's beautiful, it's powerful, it really gives you a sense of the magnitude of the suffering.
yeah,
Um, and but so here's where I went with that, right? But as a nation, we tend to measure data based on overdose deaths. And like I mentioned earlier, who gets left out of that conversation? Homicide, suicide, um, other accidents that happen because someone's under the influence. And Into Light, uh, my assumption going in was, well, if my daughter didn't overdose, I'm not part of this conversation. The
mm-hmm.
reality of it is everyone is. And whatever the coroner's report says is not the story. So there was that for me. Um, so the 41 faces, as powerful as they were, made me think it's a much smaller representation of the actual problem that we have and the need for us to really accept and embrace that. The other thing that it got me thinking of, and I've learned this, from a lot of dear friends, is that we often think of substance use disorder as an addiction to it, an illicit drug. However, alcoholism and use of marijuana and prescription drugs, um, and all of those things, right? And it was powerful to me that Theresa and yourself and others opened the door to people like me who have a different story than
Yeah.
overdose.
Yeah.
Doesn't diminish the overdose. I understand that there has to be a way to count it, and it's insurmountable. But there are other people out there who maybe don't feel like they belong. Into Light showed us that we belong,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I'm in recovery myself. My
Okay.
drugs of choice is marijuana and alcohol.
Yeah.
And I, I have the disease of addiction, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Whatever I put into my body, I'm gonna have a major issue with, and I think I'm here today because there's a little voice inside of me that told me to never touch anything that was truly, actually like physically addictive. By the grace of God, you
Yeah.
know, and so I love that as well. The fact that they really do leave it up to the person that's putting in the submission form. If your loved one died in any way related to substance use disorder, um, yeah, then they are absolutely, they will consider, based on that submission, whether or
Yeah.
not to include them. I one of the portraits I drew in Colorado was of someone that died due to alcoholism, and they were up there, and they were in that gallery in the wall, and so I really like that a lot about the project as well. It gives me it makes me think as well. It makes me think
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
And thank you for your courage in saying that. I mean, I think one of the things I've learned in the past almost 5 years is, the recovery's hard.
Oh yeah.
And, I can't really understand it, but in the people that I've met, and understanding what it takes, and and that's where, obviously I love the idea of the education, of the inclusion, but I think that was all powerful. But it also reminds us we better cast a wider net and really understand this thing. Um, we know that we have to offer services to the right person at the right time, um, for the right reason, all of that. And I think that we have to take a hard look at what people need and listen to the people who are suffering and the families who are suffering, right? It could be improved public policy, whatever that looks like. Um, but I think this project to me opened the door for the conversations, to that degree.
Well, and that's everything. Honestly, I think that that's what Theresa says all the time. We have to bring these conversations about this into
Yeah.
life. And is there, it's obviously you were moved enough to want to share with me today and come on video for us to share this. Did you feel inspired in any additional way from this project?
You know, I did. I
Mhm.
did because a lot of the times in the work you do, you're doing it in your small groups that you're having the conversations, uh, but watching for the first time, people who didn't know, um, the family member represented, and reading the story and walking through and hearing the comments. How cool is that? That person was an artist. How amazing is that? That, I mean, that person, was a huge dog lover and did a lot of work for that. Like, you hear that, and you hear, the connections being made, that
Yeah.
people are seeing this as people, and people who passed away. And we lose a lot of people for a lot of things. But to me, understanding that at the level gets lost when you start talking about the numbers we're talking about, hundreds and thousands, right? Every year, and the numbers going up. It can be easy, even for those of us involved in the work and who have loved, to forget that they're people. Um,
Absolutely.
which goes back to the stigma, and the one analogy that I really like to use, and I just talked to a friend last night, a dear friend of mine. She compares substance use disorder to a roller coaster, which I
Mm,
thought was perfect because she says, if you're struggling with the disease,
yeah,
you can't seem to make it stop or get off it. If you're watching it as a loved one or a family member, you kind of see the tragedy unfolding in front of you, but you can't take your eyes off of it. You don't know what to help. You're tempted to jump in and fix it.
mm,
And we don't have the power to do that, right? And in the process, it just be the spin of all that. That's why I like kind of the roller coaster
yeah,
analogy is that, and one of the great reminders, Insulate reminded me that the power is kind of in moving away from the roller coaster, disconnecting with love, supporting each other. Like that's the beauty of this, that you're not alone. And even if when the person passed away, you know, didn't want to talk about it or didn't know how to talk about it, there's a network that of people who can help you, and that we can still offer help and compassion to each other and to people who need it, um, until someone's ready to love themselves, right? And accept recovery. So, I know that's that's a lot, but those were the things when you walk in a room like that, especially going back when it's quiet and no one's there,
mm,
and you just can hear it in your head and you start to think those thoughts. And I think it's powerful. And I'd love to see projects like this, continue to grow and to happen with the kind of passion and really uh, collaboration that Theresa and yourself and others have been putting into it. Because I walked in that room and I felt like that's my story and that's my picture. And I can't begin to tell you how much that meant, right? Because when people kind of read things and interpret them, sometimes it just doesn't come across in your head. That's not right. That's not authentic.
yeah, of
So,
course.
yeah.
You're so right about the power for this project, and I think art in general, and writing, to humanize, this daughter is not just a statistic. I've
Right.
lost a lot of people to this disease, and they're not just a statistic. Teresa frequently compares this project to the AIDS quilt,
Yep.
and how much that humanized,
Yes.
and it wasn't just a number anymore. It was all of these people, and it was powerful. It was a
Yeah.
very powerful thing, and I think that I'm just so honored to be playing any part, and I jumped at this opportunity to try and to have the opportunity to speak with people like you, and to just um, amplify this messaging in any way possible. And so I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank you
You're so welcome. So
enough.
welcome. Anything I can do to support it, I think that it's fantastic. And I'm uh, excited for the support it's getting in Delaware. And I'd love seeing it roll out across the country.
Wow. We did, of course, just announce Massachusetts and Alabama. Uh,
Okay.
if you know anybody, in those
Okay.
communities, whether or not whether or not that they lost somebody,
Right.
odds are they know somebody that has,
Yeah.
and so it's more just like
No degrees of separation.
I've
Okay.
just been telling everybody that I know in Massachusetts or in Alabama, well, like you were there. If you happen to know anybody, this is happening
Yeah.
because odds are they do know somebody, even if they haven't personally, suffered that. So,
Yeah.
um, well, I have a plethora of incredible clips to go through here,
Mhm.
and I just can't thank enough. It's going to be hard for me to pick one, I think. And so, if there is any part of this that you feel especially like you want amplified, let me know. But in the
Okay.
meantime, I'm going to watch it again. I like to let things sit for a day, and then I like
I'm
to
with
watch
you.
it again.
Yeah.
And then
Gotta marinate things a bit.
yeah, the parts. I mean, I think I'm going to see it on my own face as I'm watching this, because there were several moments where I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely,"
Oh,
and it's really every time I'm having these conversations, I'm coming away even more and more inspired and wanting to put even more of myself into this. And I didn't expect it. When I first
Sure.
was connected to Theresa, it was like, oh, this is great. This is going to be some art commissions, right? That's
Yeah.
what it started as. And then like that first conversation I had with her, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Like I think God might have put this person in my life here
That's right.
for a reason. And that is so apparent now. And
Yeah.
it's so clear to me. And
Oh,
I'm in the program. I go to AA. I'm very active in AA. And
terrific.
when you said, like until they love themselves, that's one of the biggest things that I think support networks can do, right?
Yeah.
You can't love yourself right now, but we're going to keep loving you until you can,
Yeah.
And I think that is so incredibly life-saving in
Yeah.
so many ways. And when you said that, I was like, oh man, that might be it right there. I might just grab that
Yeah.
out.
And I think and I think that, what I've learned is it's also true, like like as a mom, you know what I mean? You beat
Yes,
yourself up and you just, and I was fortunate to have organization, like Face the Facts, and people reach out to me because I don't know that I was loving myself as a mom anymore, because
sure.
it changes. And I needed that. I wouldn't have had this conversation with you 2 years ago. There's,
Wow.
there's no way. Um, One more thing I wanted to add though, I'm
Yeah.
wearing the button of my
Yes.
daughter. And to me, that's a beautiful part of the exhibit that I was surprised. And they have been there every time I've gone.
Yeah.
And you see people, there's a lot of us who go to different, award ceremonies or different things, and you see people have the buttons on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to sometimes say, should I wear that button? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer is why not?
Yeah.
Right. And so again, it's just that was something I wasn't expected, but that could be a game changer. And you don't know who's going to see that button one day, and you're
Absolutely.
going to explain your story and be able to offer help and resources to the right people at the right time for what it is they need.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Well,
no.
there's a beautiful story behind the buttons, and it was
Oh,
actually a parent that came up with the idea.
oh,
And that's a story I intend to tell through social media, because
wonderful.
I think it's phenomenal. I was out at
Wonderful.
Wegmans, a couple weeks ago, and I saw someone wearing one of the buttons, and I stopped them and I said, "That's," I said, "Are you related to?" I forget whose button it was, and she said, "Oh no," she said, "No, I'm not." I said, I was so moved by that exhibit,
Oh,
and I just want to be having these conversations. And anytime somebody asks, I'll take the button off and let them scan the QR code on the back and learn more about this person because they're a person. And I was like, that's just, and then I proceeded to kick myself for about 3 days because I didn't ask, hey, can I get that on social media?
right, right. Yeah,
I was
right. No,
to my defense, I was like 3 days in as a social media
yeah,
person. I hadn't quite gotten there in my mind yet,
gotten to
but
that point. And
I'm
I'm
sure
sure,
it'll happen again, and I
yeah,
think
and
it
I'm
is.
sure you're seeing just a lot of, interesting from the first state all the way now through the United States. I'm sure you are really seeing some really interesting trends and, new ideas. And it's just, uh, it's, it's just almost too powerful for words
Sure
sometimes
is.
when I think about it.
It sure
Um,
is. Yeah, frequently there are no words.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Teresa,
So
it's been such a pleasure.
will I see you on the gift giving
I'll be
day?
at the gig today. Oh yeah.
Wonderful. I'll get to meet you in person.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Are you kidding me? Thank you. I'll talk to
Take
you soon.
care. Bye.